eine Frage. Ein Podcast der ZEIT.
Herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Ausgabe von Nur eine Frage. Mein Name ist Jochen Wegner, ich bin Chefredakteur der ZEIT und hier stelle ich in jeder Folge nur eine einzige Frage, die mich schon lange umtreibt, an die beste Expertin, den besten Experten, den wir dazu finden können. Dieses Mal ist unsere Frage: Werden wir unsterblich? Oder anders gefragt, wird man das Altern irgendwann wie so eine Art Krankheit heilen können? Daran arbeiten weltweit wirklich viele seriöse Forscher und es gibt mehrere auch privat finanzierte Institute, die von Milliardären aus dem Silicon Valley finanziert werden. Das klingt so ein bisschen halbseiden, ist aber wirklich sehr seriös. Werden wir unsterblich? Darüber habe ich mit Nir Barzilai gesprochen, einem der führenden Wissenschaftler auf dem Gebiet der sogenannten Alternsforschung. Er hat zum Beispiel viele sogenannte Superalte untersucht, Menschen, die älter als 100 Jahre geworden sind, und wollte wissen, was ist denn deren Geheimnis, das die so lange leben lässt. Er glaubt, dass wir mit besonderen Medikamenten vielleicht viel älter werden können als heute und die Kandidaten für diese Medikamente kann man heute schon sehen. Und jetzt geht's los. Will we become immortal, Nir?
Not yet. And that's an answer when people ask me if I believe in God. Okay, I say not yet.
Okay.
But I can elaborate.
Please do. I'm not sure what the question even means. So what would it be? So how would that work if we became immortal? What would we have to do to be there?
Yeah. Well, let me actually start with what it means to me. And by the way, I would tell you, I'm very interested in aging and how to stop it. Okay, I'm not immortalist. Immortalist is a belief.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a belief, and actually, it's interesting how people are dealing with it now that they know that it's not possible, probably for them.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's not going to be impossible, but it's not possible for them. But I wanna go and ask you. Let's say the world is not going to be destroyed by the next billions of years.
Right.
You've already lived few years. Do you really want to go over the crisis again and again? I mean, both our countries have, major issues to resolve. Aren't you a little bit tired? Do you really want to live billion years?
Do you want to live forever? You're asking me?
Yeah, I mean, I know you're supposed to ask me,
Yeah,
but our audience should think, do you
Yes.
really want to be immortal?
Yes. I don't think I want to be immortal. I'm really interested how it would be to live much longer, so like 200 years, like a vampire, maybe 1,000 years. Would that be interesting? And it's basically for a human being the same as if you live for 500 years. It would be the same as being immortal in a way. It's not a religious question. It's rather a science question for me. Is it possible to reach this? I think some people call it the singularity where you stop aging. Could that be done?
Right. So let me tell you the challenges that we have. And the first challenge is that maximal lifespan of human as a species is, and it's a statistical answer, it's 115 years. And I'm saying it's statistical because we know that somebody lived to be 122, maybe more than one person out of the billions that lived in the world, maybe one. But there's a limit, and the limit is dependent on biology, but also on what we say the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, that whatever we have, there's an entropy that doesn't allow us to repair everything.
So things tend to be more messy in the long run.
Right, more messy, and so. For me, the question for us now, for the people who live now, is if we have this capacity to live to 115 years, how come we die at age 80 on average, and how can we at least proceed from 80 to 115? The singularity is an important concept, but the singularity for the last 20 years was 5 years away.
Yes, yes.
And it still is 5 years away. So I'm not holding my breath about
It's
that.
the same with artificial general intelligence, as you may be aware of. So the researchers always tell us, thinking machines, they are just 5 years away. They are just 5 to 10 years. Then we have it. For the last 50 years, I think.
Right. So it's just like that. So I'm saying, look, I think the first thing for us will be to break the 115 years. Maybe get to 150, or if you want to 200. And I think the immortality is really not something that is in with our scientific reach. We don't have even now. We have experiments where we can extend lifespan of species significantly.
Yes.
But nothing is like 10, 100 folds.
Yeah. I read during the preparation, I found this jellyfish that seems to be some kind of immortal. Is that really true, or is it just scientific nonsense? So they are simple organisms that kind of repair themselves all the time?
Right. And that's something that's part of our environment. There are people who are looking at that.
Yes.
It's a simplicity that is very relevant to us, but not to our complexity for now.
Yes.
Okay. But look, examples like that, and examples of regeneration, that we can actually even take our own stem cells and regenerate our organs, is things that is in the future, but it's also complex. So let me give an example. Suppose the major thing in my mind is the brain, right? And let's say that we can regenerate brain cells, but can we keep our memories or what makes our personality? Can we maintain them in new neurons?
Right.
I mean, is there a way to download our brain? Let's download our brains, the two of us now, and regenerate our brain and upload those memories again. Is it really possible, and is it going to be successful, and when?
Meaning that the definition of life would be just what is going on in our brains.
Right, but we might be, I guess my point is that we might be different people then.
Yes. Yeah.
If it's different people, then let's just have our kids.
Yes.
and they'll have our genes, and they'll be the different people. Why do we need to be in a body that also has a problem and will have to do a lot of regeneration?
So this will be a really short episode, because what you're saying is have kids, be immortal.
Right. Well, we are immortal in this sense. I mean,
Yes.
hey, there's global warming. There's nuclear weapons all over the place. There's lots of things that will jeopardize us. But our immortality as human species is probably there. What happened to us is different. So look, what do immortalists do now? And that's actually a really interesting thing. Immortalists, who are very interested in the science, they're interacting with us. And when I say us, is the geroscientists, the people who are searching the biology of aging. I'm actually the president of the academy of the top geroscientists, right? And we're not immortalists. And the people who are interacting with us and really are like pushing us for success and discovering that we are not there yet, they do something really interesting. They go to cryopreservation, okay? And the idea of cryopreservation, that they'll preserve their body or brain, by the way, and when we can, cure the disease that they had to die to cryo for, and also stop aging, they'll be there whenever it happens for their immortality. And I think it's like beliefs. It gives them, if they believe in it, it gives them, because immortality is very consuming. Okay, you're really upset by the fact that you're dying. You're afraid of dying.
Yes.
You're upset by the fact that you're going to die, and you need a solution. And this is a solution that doesn't allow you right now to be immortal, but maybe in the future. So they would buy into that.
Yes. Okay. So let me rephrase the questions. How can we get really old?
Okay, that's a better question. So let me just, for the provocation of that, tell you a story that I'm telling a lot of people. 100-year-old go into the Berlin life insurance. What's the life insurance company in Berlin, the known one? Never mind, he's going there.
So there are hundreds of life insurance companies here. Maybe Allianz, I don't know. Yeah.
So he goes to the office of Allianz and he wants one life insurance. And the
Yes.
clerk says, we don't give life insurance to 100 years old.
Yes.
He said, but that's not true because my mother is insured here. He said, oh, is your mother okay? How old is she? He said, she's 120 and she's okay. And the clerk thinks better. They go to the boss and they say, there's a marketing perspective here. Why don't we give him life insurance? So they come to the guy and they say, hey, we would love to give you life insurance. Why don't you come Tuesday? We'll prepare all the forms
Yes.
and you'll just sign.
Yes. And
he said, I'm sorry, but I'm busy on Tuesday. He said, what do you have on Tuesday? He said, Tuesday, my grandfather is getting married. He said, how old is your grandfather? He says he's 150 years old. They say he's 150 years old and he wants to get married. He said he doesn't want to, but his parents puts lots of pressure. Okay? So this is not about mortality, but it also tells you that there will be trade-offs, right?
Yes.
Do you want to be 150 years old and your parent tells you what to do? Okay. But I'm telling you more that my optimistic life about aging, I'm very optimistic about what we can do with aging, is through the fact that I was studying centenarians. Those are 100 years old. Centenarians and their families. And so I'm kind of biased. When people say, I want to go in my study, I said, I apologize, but you're too young. And so those 100 years are giving me a glimpse of what it takes to do better and to live
Yes.
longer.
Yes.
And when we gathered those centenarians, there was one question that's lingering behind that took us hundreds of centenarians to answer it. And that is, okay, do they get sick when all of us get sick when they're 60 years old? And now they live longer, but they live sick? Or is their lifespan and health span, does it go together? And the answer is that they get sick 20 to 30 years behind people who live at the same time, okay? But by the way, their friends died 50 years ago, okay? But even people who live at the same time, they are healthier.
Yes.
So we have example of people who live longer and live healthier. But that's not even what's important about them. Not only they live healthier, they are sick very little time at the end of their life. We're sick 5-8 years in the end of our lives. We have disease and another disease and medication for each disease, and the medication is antagonistic to each other. They just have a compression of morbidity. At age 100 in my study, 30% of the people don't have disease and don't take any drugs. And they're not going to wake up one morning. So it's a compression of morbidity. So we love it. That's achievable for us.
Yes.
To live longer, to live healthier, to die one day. This is kind of the goal that I think is achievable and is achievable in the next few decades.
Yeah. May I ask a question? Where did you find the population you were doing research on? So where do you find the centenarians? All over the world, or is it a special group of people?
So to answer, I started my research with centenarians in the northeast part of the United States that were also Ashkenazi Jews.
Right.
European Jews.
Right.
And the reason is not because they live shorter or longer, we think, but because for genetic study, you want to have homogeneous population. The best population is the Icelandics. There are 500,000 people,
Yes.
and they're all children of 5 Vikings and 4 Irish women.
Is that
right?
so?
Yeah, so they're like cousins, brothers. So if in this population somebody has diabetes, you can look for the genes that maybe do diabetes. And that's why we went to the Ashkenazi Jews. It's a shortcut because we need between 30 and 50 times less people to get the same results.
Yeah. Because they're so homogenic in their DNA.
Right, in their DNA. So that's what we got them. You want a follow-up question?
Yeah, I just want to tell you a story. In my former life, 20 years ago, as a science reporter, I went to Okinawa. There seems to be also a centenarian population. I'm not sure if it's still there, but I assume so. And you saw people, 100-year-olds, playing, I think, cricket in the evening at 5 p.m. They came together and played with 100 years and more. They played games, sports, and I just couldn't believe it. And so I was wondering, this also seemed to be a very special population, and you have it. I assume there are others somewhere on this planet, like in Greece or wherever, where you can find these very old people, right?
Right. So, few things. First of all, in Japan, people are living the longest in the world.
Yes.
And it's probably a combination of genetic and environment. They're eating fish that is probably better than the sausages we have in Berlin.
Yes.
In Okinawa, they're living longer. And I think it's also a little complex. It also could be that the genetics there is different, and even maybe the fish is different, or other things. But there is, I think, a bias because during World War II, Okinawa suffered huge decline in population.
Right.
And the survivors of that were probably the most resilient people. And so they were selected for longevity too. I actually want to use this on because you're in Berlin, to tell you a story that will kind of explain, because it's actually important for the biology.
Right.
We have a theory in aging. It's called hormesis. Hormesis is that you have to go into severe stress sometimes, because severe stress upregulates your ability then to deal with the next stress. Okay? By the way, exercise for me is hormesis. Exercise doesn't have only good things. You increase oxidative damage when people are taking antioxidants, right?
Yes.
It also breaks your muscles, so you have inflammation.
Yes.
Not everything is good, but exercise really provides for better health and longevity. I want to give you, though, the Berlin story. So my grandfather was actually in a Czechoslovakian. He actually was in Slovakia. He was a physician, and he came to Berlin in the 1930s to study X-ray, radio,
yes.
Röntgen, right?
Röntgenstrahlung.
He was a fellow there.
Right.
And he went back to Czechoslovakia, and then World War II happened, and he was taken. And he says this very nicely. He says, the German took me to 5 camps. I got the grand tour.
Yes.
They paid for everything, not enough food. He came back. My grandfather sent him to medical school in Prague. So he stayed in Prague. He never joined the Communist Party. And in 1968, he had to escape.
Yes.
From Prague. When the Russians came in, they had to escape to Prague. He went to Austria. Austria refused to give him a refugee status, he went to Quebec. So he's again running away.
Yes.
He goes to Quebec, and separatists in Quebec are blowing up the house next to them. So he feels not safe, and
What?
he's going to Houston, Texas. In Houston, Texas, there are 2 hurricanes that destroyed his house. So he had to buy 2 houses again. And he's kind of, bring it on. He died last year at 102.
Wow.
Okay. But I'm telling you more, and maybe connecting to Okinawa, the fact that he survived the Holocaust and many other things have maybe made him more, he went through hormesis, which made him more resilient to the insults that came later in
Yes.
life.
Yeah. So what you tell us, it's important to be stressed from time to time, right?
Right. And look, chronic stress is terrible, right?
Yes.
If you have pain and you cannot sleep at night, right? And it's, you cannot cure it. It's a terrible stress. If you have cancer, if your kid has cancer, those are stresses that will kill you. But if you have intermittent stress, like exercise, and I should put here just one warning. You know the song, what doesn't kill you make you stronger?
Mm-hmm.
It was written by survivors. We don't know how many died, right? So let's put it into context. But stress is something that can serve us. But we're looking for mechanisms that are beyond stress. I mean, in other words, I'm not telling the audience now, you have to get into stress. We have other mechanisms that we can target.
Yeah. But what you mentioned, so also if you reduce your calories in a substantial way, for your whole life, and if you're a very simple organism or if you're a human being, obviously you tend to live a little bit longer, right? Or even in the case of little worms, very much longer.
Right. Who's you? If you're a mice, we are okay.
Yes.
We know what to do with you.
Yes.
If we're a worm, we know what to do with you. So those experiments that are always part of our experiment, because those are the control experiment. The longest living animals.
Yes.
The longest living animals that we have are animals that we take brothers, and half of them eat whatever they want, and half of them are getting 60% of them.
Yes.
So they are 40% calorically restricted.
Yes.
And those
it's
that
a
are
really
40%
ugly diet.
Those that are 40%, with this diet, they live healthier and they live 40% longer. 40% longer.
Wow.
Imagine if you're 80, now you're 120. Okay?
Yeah.
And this was a base for a lot of things that we know now about aging. But there's one thing that is very important for how we talk about diet these days. Because people, just like you, said, oh, that means less food. That means if I eat less for breakfast, less for lunch, less for dinner, I'll live longer.
Yes.
But that's not what we did with the animals. We brought them the food in the morning, and they finished the food within an hour or few hours. And now they were fasting for 22, 23 more hours.
Right.
So they were not only caloric restriction, they were fasting.
Yes.
If we gave them the food throughout the day, they were leaner, but they didn't live much longer. And that's why a lot of what we are talking about now and what I'm practicing is what's called an intermittent fasting.
You do that yourself, right?
Yeah, I eat only 8 hours during the day. So if I had dinner yesterday at 8 o'clock at night, I'm not going to have anything before noon. And that has been shown. There's no way to show that it extends your lifespan, but a lot of health parameters are improving this way.
Right.
It's also easy, and it also, if you had a diet for 3 months, you could break any day. But if I have only 1 hour to go, I'll have a cup of black coffee
Yes.
without sugar, and I'll be okay. I'm not going to break for an hour or two of fasting. So that's how we kind of translate things to humans.
Yeah. But do we know that we are like mice in the sense that does fasting really help humans? Are there studies showing that it prolongs life? Is it a silly question?
No, it's not a silly question. And the answer is we don't really know, but let me say, I'll tell you how we know. We know, look, we know that nutrition is important, but we know that nutrition is most important when we target obese people. Okay? Obesity is something that drives aging. I'll give you an example. During COVID, if you were over the age of 80, your chances of dying was 180 times more than if you were 20. But if you were obese at any age, you had 8 times more chances of dying. Okay? So obesity is something that drives aging. And so if I'm talking from this perspective, and you could say, by the way, you could say that the rats that ate whatever they want, they were kind of obese rats, okay? And then we made them lean. So the obese leanness is very important, and it's really okay. So the reason now that we do know that it's involved in aging is from the new drugs that are called GLP-1 agonists,
Yes.
or Ozempic or Manjaro.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how they're called in Germany. Do they have name? Say the name.
Ozempic is the household name, I think,
Okay,
that most
Ozempic.
people know. Yeah.
Okay. When you get drugs like Ozempic in clinical trials, and it's
Yes.
very important to have clinical trials. Clinical trials means you took people and they got either placebo, they got injections without Ozempic, or Ozempic, right? And in those clinical studies, within not too many months, it showed not only to take rid of obesity or diabetes, but also it prevents kidney disease. It prevents cardiovascular disease. It prevents progression of cognitive decline and Alzheimer, and variety of other age-related disease. But the most important thing is that it prevented overall mortality. We have to stop to ask, will it cause longevity? What we can do in a clinical study is see if people die less.
Yes.
So if they have less disease and if they die less, I would say that GLP-1, that is calorie mimetic, right?
Right.
It imitates calorie restriction. It has been shown that.
Yes.
Caloric restriction in humans was never going to work, okay? You tell people to lose weight, 3% will be successful, right?
Yes,
It
yes.
was always a challenge.
Yes.
Now it's not a challenge anymore, and now we know that it's working.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is, if your question is people who are doing caloric restriction live longer, this study hasn't been done.
Yes.
But drug that does caloric restriction, and it separates immediately within few years, 30 to 13 months, you would know
Yes.
that those drugs will, and this is only one of 4 drugs that have shown compelling evidence that they prevent other diseases and also prevent overall mortality.
Yeah. Let's mention the other drugs. You're on your way to do research with one of them, which is very special also, right? So what are the other drugs, first of all?
So the other drugs, and I'll say, so one is, the family is called biguanides, but the drug that I think is available in Germany is metformin,
Yes.
or maybe glucophage.
Yes.
Either way. The second drug is an SGLT2 inhibitor, and I don't know, it's Farxiga in the United States. I'm not sure what's the German there are 4 different manufacturers. So I'm not sure which it is, and maybe we can check it out. The third drug is what are, the Ozempic kind of drugs. And the last drug, which is kind of surprising and not out there, is biphosphonates. Biphosphonates are drugs that are given for osteoporosis. And it's interesting. It's more in women than men because women lose more bones than men. But women who are taking this drug and they go to ICU for an emergency, their chances of dying is 60% less than if they don't have the drug, as an example. But they have less cardiovascular disease and other diseases. So we have 4 drugs that we have very good data. And when I'm saying good data, again, it's clinical data. It's not that we saw people are taking this drug and they're doing better. No, you have to take people and divide them, and the patients don't know what they're getting, the doctors don't know what they're getting, and we compare them. And those studies have scored 12 out of 12 of a scale to make sure that we can actually repurpose them right now to stop aging.
Yes. So why don't we do that? So why don't I get my drug cocktail every morning and will be 120 years old, 115 years old?
Right. And this is as the president of the academy, as a scientist that has done it so many years, and I'm frustrated too, is something that is on my mind a lot. And I'll tell you really the reason. When we go to medical school, the first day we learn do no harm, primum non nocere in Latin. Okay, think of it. It makes us really conservative on a Gauss of a class in medical school. If you come to them and say, "I have pain, can you give me Tylenol?" Half of them will not give you Tylenol because 1 out of 500,000 people have liver abnormality. Why would I give you Tylenol? Okay, we're conservative. On the second day of medical school, we learned that there's no never and no always in medicine. So not only we're conservative, we're confused. And I think, and I'm not complaining, but I'm saying that this conservatism leads the way. And people are very reluctant to try something new because the truth is that in every drug, we can save 100 and kill 3. Okay, that's why all the commercial and all the warning box are there. And we have to get better, and we are getting better at, okay, who are the 100 that we should treat and who are the 3 that we should avoid? Or how do we discover that? We can start giving drugs to everyone, but we might have to do liver function test in 1 month and stop you if there is any problem, right? But this is kind of the state of the art. So we are writing papers, we're educating the conservative doctors, and we're making progress, but it's never in medicine that, okay, I heard something today and tomorrow all is going to be like that.
There's another question connected to that, to medical school maybe, or to the philosophical layer of being a doctor. Is aging an illness, or is it just the way things are? So is it just like gravity? So aging is there, it's super, so don't discuss this, it's there. Don't ask yourself, you could be 200 years old, Jochen, just die when you're very old. That's the way things are. You can't treat that. You shouldn't treat that as a disease, right?
Yeah. And this thing we hear a lot. And I would tell you, first of all, about aging is natural. And, our mother told us, nothing you could do with aging. My answer always is, I'm not talking about death. We'll die, okay? But aging at least shouldn't be the way it is now because it's malleable. And I think that's what people didn't know, that we can do something about aging. I don't think we're accepting as a society, as a Western society, we're not accepting natural thing. Cancer is also a natural thing. So what? We don't treat cancer? We have many other diseases that are natural thing. What's natural in our house? Nothing in our house is natural, and we build it, right? I think this idea that aging is natural thing is really something that probably it's easy to get over with, because if we didn't do it for others, we didn't do it for aging.
Yeah, but
the specific answer for us, from my perspective as a biologist, as a geneticist, right? Aging is the mother of those diseases. Okay,
Yes.
Aging drives disease.
right.
Aging drives cardiovascular disease and cognitive decline and cancer and diabetes. Okay,
Yeah.
Aging drives that. And so if aging drives it, aging is the mother of those diseases.
Right.
But I don't think we should call aging a disease. And the reason I don't think we should call aging a disease is that old people don't want to be called sick.
Yes.
And not everybody over age 60 or 65 is sick. More than that, look what happened with COVID. We called the elderly and we isolated them. We sent them to island. They couldn't see their children and grandchildren, right? That was very, very upsetting. It's kind of ageism. So they don't want to be called sick. And those are the guys we want to help, right? So we don't want to have a campaign for the people who said, we don't care for you. The retirement organization don't want to call aging a disease. The American Federation for Aging Research doesn't want to call aging a disease. But more important, I've been dealing with the Food and Drug Administration because it's important for disease, because then diseases have drugs. Okay, so you
Yes.
need drugs for diseases. And we found out that we don't need to call aging a disease. We told them, hey, we're going to have a treatment that delays diseases and mortality. And they said, fine, okay, we will call it aging. They don't have to call it aging. It's like pornography. We know what it means, okay?
Okay.
But we don't need to do it. So I don't think it's even important to discuss that. But by the way, not every drug is for disease. Think of it, contraception is not for a disease, right? So the FDA approved drugs that are not for disease. We don't need it. So I'm saying too, I'm schizophrenic. I'm saying, yeah, of course, aging is disease. And second, I say, I don't care. We don't need to talk to name names.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. I'm not sure if I know what aging really is, or if we touched on this a little bit, but what does it mean to age? What is going on in my body when I'm aging? It's obviously it's complex, isn't it? It's not just one thing that happens when you age.
Right. So let me put it in this context. First of all, there is a biology of aging, right? Because when you see people in a movie theater, you know who's young and who's old, right? So aging has a biology. It's not only that aging has a biology. You can see by our friends and our parents' friends that some people age faster and some age slower, right? So, and that was something on my mind when I was very young. That kind of made me go into aging. But I said, if that's the case, then aging has some flexibility, because how come people have so much phenotype that is different when they age? And then, so this is obvious to everyone. What's not obvious to everyone is that aging drives the diseases, right? And it's very important to understand if aging drives the diseases, we have to target aging before we have the disease. It's maybe never too late, but I don't want to have a disease. I want to treat it before. And that's kind of the problem for physicians is when is it before? Or when you're 20 or 40 or 50 or 60, when is exactly before? But to now, with this in mind, to answer your question, what is aging? What we have in the biology, it's something that's called hallmarks of aging. And we have 14 of them, and there'll be more.
It used to be 12, by the way, as far as I remember.
Right. And I'll go with 12. 14 are new additions.
Okay.
But the hallmarks of aging, how do you become a hallmark of aging? You have to show that something goes wrong when you're old.
Yes.
That you could actually take young mice and induce this wrong thing and they'll age.
Right.
But more important, you can take mice and fix it and they would live healthier and longer.
Right.
Okay? So this is how you become a hallmark.
Right.
The interesting thing, so this is kind of the biology we have, and I'm not calling it the mechanisms of aging because we're not there yet, but we're calling it things that are involved in aging because the cool thing about them, you target one of them, you affect the others. That's why we really don't have to target all of them. Maybe if we target all of them, we get better effects, and we will, combination, but each one of them affects the other. And
May I ask a question? Because this is really interesting. So they are not independent, right? So I'm a physicist, so they are not orthogonal in a way that if you change this one is also changing a little bit, right? So Could it be that behind all this is just one thing?
I think we hope so is the best thing before I start boring everyone, okay? I would say one thing, aging starts from fertilization, right? From the egg, from the embryo, through intrauterine, through development. But each stage of this aging, maybe there is one clock that kind of pushes it and we don't know it, but there are different stages to what happens. So, for example, there is an acceleration of aging between ages 60 and 90. There is an acceleration of aging. You age faster. There's another bump, like when you're middle-aged, 45 to 55.
Right.
So there's a time course that's kind of confusing. And it's maybe confusing because at a certain age, like at age 50, until age 50, when you grow, when you have growth hormone, it's very good for you. Mm-hmm. You're stronger, it's protecting you from diseases, from mortality. And it switches after the age of 50 because now you're starting to break down. Mm-hmm. And when you break down, you don't want to invest in building, you want to invest in protecting against the breakdown. Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. So I gave you an example of the complication.
Yeah, I got it. And so to come back to the 14 hallmarks, can you so what's going on? 14 things happen in my body when I'm getting older. What, for example, happens when I'm getting older?
So one example is, and you'll stop me.
I would never stop you.
One example is our mitochondria. So, our cells have our nucleus and a lot of things are happening in our cells, but the energy comes from mitochondria. Mm-hmm. Mitochondria are bacteria that billion years ago came and lived together with the cell. The cell was pathetic. It could hardly survive. It was exposed to oxygen, which is bad, and it had no energy. It has glycolysis, which doesn't give you much energy. And there's this symbiosis. Those bacteria came into the cells, and they gave the cell energy, and they protected it from oxygen, and history has changed forever in our evolution. Those mitochondria have their own DNA and have their own problems. There's less of them, they're becoming less active, and they form some things together, and they are being removed, and they have mutations and other things. So we have a decline in mitochondrial number and function, and if we can fix it, okay, we fix a lot of what's going wrong with the cells.
Yes.
The cells have another mechanism. It's called autophagy. Autophagy is the garbage disposal of the cell. There's a lot of things that are formed wrong, and we have this mechanism that takes all this garbage, breaks it down to its initial forms, so it's green energy. Okay, it can be used again.
Yes.
But it lets the cell function again. And I can go on and on. Each one of them has been shown to decline with aging, and when you fix it, aging has been, your animals are doing really much better.
That would be one example. So,
two. I gave you two.
I'm sorry. So 2 examples. Are all the other 12 also on the cellular level? Is it basically?
It's on cellular levels, right?
Maybe trivial question, but it's not. The bigger systems that are affected, it's always on the cell layer of things, right?
Right. It's on the cell layers of things, and one of the things that happen, every cell, we have billions and billions of cells, and every cell has his own aging and his own problem. Some of the organs are aging similarly. Our organs are aging a little bit differently between them, but those mechanisms are all cellular mechanisms that are correct for all the cells in our body.
Okay, got it. So to come back to how to get really, really old. So what can we do today? So what did you find out? Are there patterns when you look at really old people that are really healthy? What are factors? Where can we tweak the systems to get older?
So the reason we looked at older people is really to find what we call a longevity gene. But let me explain, it's not that they're a gene that just some people get inside their DNA. It's really some changes on the existing genes that have changed the biology in a way that their cells and therefore their bodies and their life become healthier and longer. And this is the quest, and this is what we discovered. In fact, there are already 2 drugs that have been that are in the market or nearly in the market. I'm not sure, past FDA approval, based on what we found in centenarians.
Right.
Our centenarians have cells that are slowing, that they age slower. And those are the mechanisms that we're trying to find and make it relevant for all of us.
There are drugs out there already on the market. And wouldn't it be interesting for society to, so we had that before, but to treat millions and millions of people with these drugs in a very young age to get healthy elderly population one day?
So the answer is yes, and I told you about the conservatism, but your question underlines another problem. Those drugs have been, the recruitment to the studies on those drugs were people over the age of 50. And not everything that is good for young is good for old. And not everything that is good for old is good for young.
Yes.
So I'm going to tell you 2 different answers about what you can do when you're 20 or 30 and what you can do when you're over the age of 50. I told you, after the age of 50, we're starting to have the breakdown.
Yes. Bad for me.
I'll give you an example that will take us through the drugs then. Growth hormone. By the way, there's one growth hormone, but there are many growth hormones. They have other name. One of the major growth hormone is called IGF-1. I might use it.
Right.
So I'm saying IGF-1 is a growth hormone.
Right.
So when you look at high IGF-1 levels in young people, it's very good.
Yes.
Okay, when they have lots of growth hormone, they have less diseases and they die less.
Yes.
Okay. Over the age of 50, it totally flips. Okay. You have high growth hormone, you get diseases, and you die.
Why is that so?
Because you need to grow because you need, to be strong, to get wives, to have children, okay? When you're over the age of 50 and you're starting to break down, you don't want to invest the energy in growth.
Yeah.
You have to invest your energy in breakdown.
So you said that before. So it's much smarter for my body to concentrate on repairing stuff.
Exactly. And our centenarians, and it's, this exchange you can see. So our centenarians, I'll tell you interesting things. First of all, models in nature that are dwarf, okay, that don't grow.
Yes.
Live longer. The little dogs live longer than the big dogs. And the ponies live longer than the thoroughbreds. And when in the lab we give growth hormone, they die. When they're born dwarf, they live longer, etc., etc. Even in our 100 years old, okay, they're already 100 years old, and we measure their growth hormone. The ones who have the lowest part of growth hormone live 2 years longer than those that have the highest growth hormone. They're already 100 years old. And the most important thing, 60% of the genetic changes that we find between normal people and centenarians are functional mutations in the growth hormone IGF axis. Okay, so we have compelling evidence that growth hormone is not good for you. So now I told you this, but you asked me about treatment.
Yes.
Why we're not treating now?
Yeah.
So the drug metformin, and maybe I'll say a few words about the drug metformin, but before I do, if you take the drug metformin, it lowers your growth hormone. So you don't want to take it when you're young.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
You don't want to take it when you're young.
Yes.
It does, by the way, other things that you shouldn't take it as young.
Yes.
So we're not talking about the same medication. I'll talk about young in a minute. But the drugs that I'm talking about, the metformin, the SGLT2 inhibitor, the GLP-1 agonist, the biphosphonates, have tested and they're good at old and not at young. What I predict for young is that in 50 years, okay, and I'm saying 50 years because in 50 years, maybe both of us, we're not, nobody will find it to complain about what I said. In 50 years, I think this is what's going to happen. You'll be 20 years old, you'll come to the doctor office, and you'll get probably an injection, maybe also pills that will keep you young, will erase your aging.
Right.
You'll have to repeat it every few months or every few years, I don't know. And I think this will stunt your aging enough, even maybe to pass the age of 115, and
Right.
maybe to get to 150.
Did you say 250 just for protocol, right?
I didn't say the age 250. You really want me to say the age 250?
No. I just you said it could be more than
150, yeah.
15 or 150.
150. Oh, 150. Okay. I mean, I'm
Sorry,
just saying the number.
Yeah, okay.
It might break, I really want to say, it might break this barrier that we called 115.
Yes.
Look, the reason I'm saying that is that you can take a sperm of a 90-year-old man
Yes.
and fertilize an egg of a 50-year-old woman.
Right.
And you could have a normal child. By the way, you have chances of having abnormal kids too, but if you have a normal child, what happens? They start at 0. Okay, we don't remember the age of our parents, right? We start from 0. So we already discovered in our body, how do we take cells backwards
Right.
in time?
Yes.
And this idea is already out there in research, at least not to do the whole body, but to do things locally. For example, there's a company that is infusing few or delivering few factors to the eye of people with glaucoma that will restore their vision, okay, by taking the cells, by taking those cells backwards,
Right.
making them young again. Okay, so this is a research that's now, it's ongoing, but it's far from saying we're going to make this in all the body and assume that it will be okay. And for example, when you do that, when you take cells and make them younger, you also increase the chances of cancer, for example. So you need to understand better the safety. So this is if you do it with 4 factors. If you do it for 3 factors, you have less cancers. So
Right.
the technology, the idea of the technology, the proof of principle is here, okay? But the practice of that is probably not that close.
Okay. Got it. So I remember that if you give these factors to whatever mice or rats, they tend to be younger, but they also had these cancers all the time. Why is that so? Isn't cancer, kids' question, isn't cancer also a phenomenon which comes with aging?
Yes. So first of all, it's kind, cancers are young in the cell in the sense that they're multiplying. They're
Yes.
high energy, they're multiplying.
Yes.
They're really immortal in a sense. If you didn't die, the cancer would go on, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And there's a lot of exchange between aging and cancer. For example, another hallmark that maybe a lot of heard about is the telomere shortening. Telomeres are kind of additional of DNA at the end of our chromosome. And every time our cell divide, they become shorter. And when they become shorter, at the end, they make the cell go to another stage that's called senescent. That's old, and actually, when they accumulate, it's not good for us. But anyhow, short telomeres are a problem. If you increase the telomere length, what will happen to animals, they'll get cancer. Unless you do some other things, but they'll get cancer. When you look at humans and you say, is long telomeres okay? Then the answer is the people with the shorter telomeres, they have more cardiovascular disease. The people with the longer telomeres are at risk for cancer. By the way, cancer have very long telomeres. Okay? So you see that this interaction between cancer and aging is a little bit problematic. We cannot always hope to make people younger and not cause a cancer in some of them. So that's
okay.
one of the challenges we have.
Yeah. And you wanted to elaborate a little bit more on metformin.
Right. So metformin has a fascinating story. Metformin is an extract of the French lilac. Now, although it's an extract of the French lilac, it's manipulated, so it's a drug.
Right.
Okay, so you have to have a doctor that prescribes it. And metformin was used in the 1920s, 1950s in Europe as kind of an anti-aging drug. People got it for osteoporosis, for flu, to prevent malaria. I don't know if it worked, but anyhow, they used it. And so if they used it and it was common, it must have worked for some people. And at that time, it was discovered that it lowers glucose in people who had diabetes. So it became an anti-diabetic drug. So a lot of people say, oh, well, if you treat diabetes, of course, you prevent a lot of diseases, but this is true really, or this was true until recently, only to metformin. You give insulin, you give other drugs like sulfonylurea, like PPAR gamma inhibitors, other things. They don't do it. Only metformin do it. People on metformin have less cardiovascular disease, less cancer, less cognitive decline and Alzheimer. It prevents diabetes and they have lower mortality. Okay? So metformin is certainly a drug that is what we call gerotherapeutic. But I think the most compelling example comes from what happened with COVID. There were 9 papers from all over the world observing that diabetic people with metformin had half of the hospitalization and death and long COVID than people who were not on metformin. That led to a clinical trial, and I'm always saying clinical trial is the placebo control or a control study, double blind. And those studies gave metformin within 3 days of COVID diagnosis, usually on the first day of COVID diagnosis. And they prevented hospitalization and death by 50% and also long COVID. And of course, they made the whole disease easier. By the way, my wife and I were one of the first in the United States to get COVID because we were in Westchester where COVID came to the United States.
Yes.
And then we didn't know what to do. We wore gloves, but not masks. But we were both on metformin. And we knew that we had COVID, but we were hardly sick. We never stopped working. We had, my wife had headache. I lost my sense of smell and thing, but it was a mild COVID. So it's not only hospitalization and death, it's mild COVID. And the point that I'm making here is people will tell you metformin is for metabolism, but it's also good for increasing your immunity, for decreasing inflammation, and for also making your body strong when you have to deal with a disease. And that's why this example has been really making metformin a really good example of a cheap drug. Okay, it's the cheapest drug in the US formulary that could be repurposed to older people. Another point is doctors, that's another thing. Doctors, it's legal for doctors to repurpose any drug. Metformin itself was repurposed for obesity. It's not the good drug for obesity anymore. We have better drugs. But people lose 5 to 8 pounds on metformin. It was repurposed to polycystic ovary syndrome. And it's the first drug of choice. it's the first drug of choice for prediabetes. If you have a diagnosis of prediabetes, you're likely to be on metformin. For COVID, for macular degeneration. So, why not for aging?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you're trying to do a huge study with that, right?
Right.
You're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on a study. So it's actually amplifying. I think a study like that will be done also with Ozempic.
Right.
But you have to understand the study. Any physician can prescribe metformin or any one of the other drugs. The reason I'm doing this study is for the Food and Drug Administration.
Yes.
For the Food and Drug Administration to show a template of a study that if any drug can show it, they should approve it. And if they don't want to call it aging, I don't care, but that's what it's going to be.
So how do you see this longevity movement financed by billionaires, which is a very interesting topic because many of your really excellent colleagues is it correct to say, got hired by billionaires to kind of form the perfect research institute, for example, and do the research you are also doing? Why is that happening? Is that maybe it's a silly question because obviously Jeff Bezos wants to be really old.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think some billionaires, a lot of billionaires that are in the field are young billionaires or multimillionaires.
Yes.
And so they say, we have money. What's our prospect? Our prospect is we want to be healthy and enjoy the money for long life. And that's okay. Look, I'm also somebody who's frustrated with getting old. So I totally understand this motivation, although they're not frustrated from being old yet, but they're thinking about it. So this is for us a good movement. I think the billionaires are rubbing wrong because the public think that this treatment will be available only for them. Okay? There is one billionaire who you might have heard of, Brian Johnson, and I'm sure some of the people who are hearing this podcast have heard about Brian Johnson. And
he's famous for especially taking rapamycin. Is that the name how you pronounce it?
Rapamycin.
Rapamycin. And he's just stopped, so the world press covered this incident.
Right. And I'm grateful for Brian Johnson for a few things. First of all, that he brings the frustration of getting old. He doesn't want to get old. And it's good. He also brings us, the legitimate people, to talk about it. So that's good. But from now on, I'm going to say bad things about Brian Johnson.
Please do.
Okay. So, first of all, he says, he claims he's doing research, right? He's spending $20 million, have doctors, and he's doing research. Research is not on n equal 1. That's not how research is done. Whatever it is, it's going to be right only for him because he has genes and he is interacting with the environment in a way that not everybody can do, right? His son is donating blood to him.
Yes.
I don't know if that's relevant for everyone and what will be that role in his longevity. So when I say that, I always say another thing. The thing that scares me most is that Brian Johnson dies. And by the way, I think there's high chances of that, and I'll tell you why in a second. But if Brian Johnson dies, people can come to me or the members of the academy and the people who are doing really exceptional research and say, if Brian Johnson didn't make it, why do you think you're going to make it?
Yes.
So I have to be out there saying, I always said that I thought that Brian Johnson can die, and that's because he didn't listen to us. Not because.
Okay.
The other thing that Brian Johnson is doing, he's taking 150 supplements.
Right.
And I want to talk a little bit about supplements. And again, I always want to say something good about things. And I think supplements are good for the economy. Okay? People are buying a lot of supplements. But what happened with supplements are not showing actions. All you have to show on supplements that you have these supplements and that it's nutraceutical, but you don't have to have any action. So we know nothing about supplements. We know nothing. But more important, you think that if you give a supplement and then another supplement, they will add to each other or even synergize each other, right? But many of them can be antagonistic to each other.
Right.
There is a recent paper in JAMA that followed 7 million people over 12 years and showed that people with multi-supplements have 4% increase in mortality. This was very strange to us because most people that take supplement are doing also good things like in exercise and diet and sleep and social connectivity, and yet they died more. So I would really say that if you cannot read the supplement had a study that showed an effect, you're just helping the economy.
Right. So because that's interesting for many people, so we shouldn't take all that stuff. So I don't know, there are dozens of things you can order at Amazon and swallow in the morning or whatever. So you wouldn't do that at all.
Right. I would. There's also more to that. Look, when you say the word supplement, it indicates that you have low level and you have to supplement them. And that's not the case. People take the supplements as if they take no matter what, it's going to be helpful. And that's not how biology works. Another example that may be surprising to the listeners is a lot of us have low vitamin D levels. And so there are huge amount of studies with hundreds of thousands of people now in a controlled way that got vitamin D or didn't get vitamin D, and it didn't make any difference.
That's
except
depressing.
for osteoporosis.
Okay.
Except for osteoporosis.
Yeah.
So I have very low vitamin D level, and my doctor wanted to give me vitamin D level, and I said, why? So he said osteoporosis. So I said, so I'll see if I have osteoporosis. And I don't. My bone is very strong. So supplements is, so I gave you just a few examples how supplements is really a problem. And on the other hand, I told you there are FDA approved drugs.
Yes.
FDA approved drugs went through clinical study and safety. So for me, if you maximize your exercise and your diet and your sleep and your social connectivity, and you still feel that you're aging, you should take a drug. You shouldn't take a supplement that we don't know what it's doing.
Okay. First of all, we have to come back to the billionaires. So there's a, for example, I'm aware of an institute called Altos Labs. Is that the name?
Yes.
And they collect so many of really brilliant scientists, obviously.
Right. And some of those brilliant scientists are in our academy too.
I assume so.
Look, I'll give another example in the contrast. Google founder a decade ago, maybe more by now, created a pharmaceutical called Calico.
Yes.
And the headlines was we want to prevent death, okay, which is not a sentence that I like anyhow. And it became apparent that Calico is not interested in aging. And I think what they're doing, they're probably a pharmaceutical that targets cancer, which I have nothing about, but that's not what we hoped for the industry to do. And this is in contrast to Altos, because Altos, at least formally, and actually, not formally, I know for fact, they started with all we want to do is accelerate aging research. And that's why they took the people in. And the people told me that they were never asked even to produce a drug.
Right.
Okay, it was to advance the science,
Right.
knowing that if you advance the science, there are commercial possibilities. It's true that somewhere at the Altos, their board said, but why don't we invest in biotechs? And so 30% of their money is invested in biotechs, and I think that's terrific. Okay, so so for me, Altos is a very positive force in this, and it's okay. It doesn't matter, especially in the United States now. If somebody can fund your research, we don't know what's going on with our research these days, but
Yes.
if somebody can fund the research, it's really terrific.
Yeah. But isn't
Some
it
of the
also
billionaires-
isn't it a little bit secretive? So do they publish official papers?
Their scientists are producing papers. Absolutely, absolutely.
So it's not a closed shop.
No, it's not a closed drop. Now, is there going to be a progression? Are they going to change? Because that's the problem when it's private. All of a sudden, somebody said, "Let's change our priority. Let's do," and there are people that come from a very aggressive things, and science is not going fast. Okay. If it was going fast, we wouldn't call it research. Okay, we need to get back and really understand what's going on. And if somebody is going to lose patience, there's always a way to do it better. But scientists are scientists, and they have different criteria. But if they're going to change their mind, we have to watch it. And I'll be the first to say, "Hey, I don't like what Altus is doing anymore." I got in a problem with Calico for criticizing them, okay, and for saying that they're not helping our field, and I got into trouble with that. But I would be out there and pointing out to that. But Altos is a good example. I wish there were more.
I have two last questions. So I thank you very much for explaining me what.
By the way, I have also two questions for you. So
Yes.
you go first. So we have 4 questions, not 2 last
Okay, that's
questions.
cool. That's cool. So my first question would be, you mentioned that before. So what would you recommend a 56-year-old guy as his lifestyle? Yeah, asking for myself. So I learned 8 hours of eating and the rest of the day no eating, right? No calories. That's obviously helpful. No supplements. What else?
So, yes. So, first of all, I think the major point we want to talk about is maximize or optimize, right?
Right.
And let's start with exercise, okay?
Yes.
I think part of what we have to do, everybody has to have I have Fitbit watch or their rings, or Apple Watch. And I think those are let me say this, our revolution really is targeting our health rather than treating our disease.
Right.
Okay. And that's why I said the reason that I'm saying aging drives diseases is we want to do it before you have disease. And so you're at the right age exactly to do it. So you have to maximize your exercise. And maximize your exercise means if you didn't do I know you walked a lot today already, but if you didn't do in your age 10,000 steps a day,
Yes.
and you see at 7 o'clock at night that you're not 10,000 steps yet, you should go out and walk or exercise or jog or something.
Yes.
Um,
Got it.
for elderly, it's more than that. You have to do upper body, not only cardiovascular, and you have to deal with flexibility.
Right.
Okay, because you don't want to step off stairs. If you don't have the flexibility, you step off of a stair, and you can hurt yourself, and you just cannot hurt yourself.
Okay.
So that's in very principle.
So what would you recommend? So doing yoga classes, or what would you recommend for
I'm not going to those. I'm not going to give example of that.
Okay.
Look, it's very personalized. Okay, what works is personalized. Not everything works for everyone. Also, this intermittent fasting, there are people who cannot do it. They cannot skip breakfast for whatever reason, psychological, doesn't matter. Yoga is good. Sauna is good. Okay, there are things that are that we believe are good, and you can practice them.
Okay.
The second thing is food, and food is also kind of personalized. I'll give example. You can do Mediterranean diet. You can do low carbohydrate diet, right? You can do intermittent fasting. You can do vegetarian. The problem, if you would go and decide, are you a vegetarian, by the way?
Not these days.
If you become a vegetarian, you're at the risk of becoming more obese, because vegetarian are changing their protein, are supplementing, instead of the proteins, they go to carbohydrates, and carbohydrates will make you fat. And fat, I talked already about obesity as accelerating aging. Okay, so all those things are not one advice fits everyone. You actually have to search for whatever is good for you. Sleep. Look, I'm trying to spend 8 hours in a dark room with no noise every night, and it doesn't help me. I sleep for 6 hours and 40 minutes. But I'll tell you, if I'm not doing it at dark and I have television on and stuff, I don't sleep 6 hours and 40 minutes.
Right.
And social connectivity is clear, and it's more important for the elderly. They have to be engaged, but it works in every age. It has a biology. All of those have a biological underpinning.
Yes, you mentioned that twice before. So it's really important to have friends or family or whatever, or a community where you go to. Why is that preventing me from dying?
There are lots of studies, more in an older age group, of the connection between social connectivity and physical functions, lab results, and prevention of diseases.
But this is silly in a way, isn't it? So if I have friends, my body does something else.
It's more indirect than just having friends, right? It's what the friends make you do, right? It's going to a sport event together, or golf together, right? Or having after school activity.
Drink a lot of whiskey together.
Well, drinking is a different issue. In the United States, the Surgeon General says that alcohol is dangerous, which is another problem. But yes, this and I say social connectivity, but it's probably it's wider than that. It's lots of activities that led you to another behavior that is helpful.
Yeah.
So I just clamped it like that.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
So those are the thing that you can maximize at any age.
Yes. Yeah. But that's it, basically, right?
Well, yeah, that's it. Except that I think at a certain age, it's not enough, and we can do better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and the importance of drugs is also because there are populations, right, that cannot do. There are poor people that don't have a treadmill and don't have a gym next to them and are not going to exercise unless you bring it. There are people in communities who don't like fish, okay? It's good to have more fish, but they don't like fish. They should also have vegetables and fruits, but they're expensive, so they're not going to buy them, right? So there are challenges in getting poor people to do it, and maybe a drug like metformin that is so cheap is actually a better plan for them, or a cheaper plan and a more immediate plan than building gym. It was actually calculated that for every dollar of metformin, you have to spend $100,000 on the environment of a campaign, to change the environment, to give coupons for the gym, or to bring fish or something like that.
And would you recommend that I see my doctor and say, hey, I want to take metformin and also GLP-1 or Ozempic stuff? Give me the whole treatment, please. I'm healthy, but give me the stuff.
Yeah, so we are at the stage where we have papers out there for physicians to read, but we have 4 drugs, and we want to give the physicians like a way to think about it. In other words, a patient comes and say, "I want a drug. Which drug is good for which patient?" I don't see your whole body, but I think that probably the first drug that you need is not Ozempic. Okay? If you're obese, I would say use Ozempic, get to a normal weight, and then take metformin. But maybe you should start with metformin.
Right.
Or if your kidneys are already showing that they have declined function, you should do the SGLT2 inhibitor. If you have osteopenia, you should do the biphosphonates, right? So we're trying to say, and by the way, I want to tell you another thing. We don't want it to start really before the age of 60.
Right.
We want to insert it more as a secondary prevention, like you have to have already something. Maybe you had a heart attack, or maybe you're starting to be slow, or maybe you said, my cognition is not the same. We want to start it somewhere before aging accelerates, but not when you're totally young. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be on metformin, but I'm saying when we're going to insert that, we're going to be a little bit more conservative.
Right. So age of 60 would be a safe place to start, right?
I would say that unless you have pre-diabetes, if your hemoglobin A1C is 5.8, I would say you should get metformin.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have one last question, but tell me your questions first.
It's not really, I could form it as a question, but it's really something I want to say.
Please,
okay?
Please do.
We're talking about aging, right? And we're talking about aging at many stages, but really I was trying to say more of people over the age of 50. But the truth is that there are other people that need help with aging. For example, Down syndrome are people who are aging really quickly. For example, people who survive cancer, there are probably more people that survive cancer than Down syndrome. They're aging because we give them chemotherapy and radiation, we age them.
Yes.
And cancer survivors, in particular kids, are getting heart attacks when they're 35.
Yes.
Women with breast cancer sometimes are doing really poorly after they survive.
Yes.
So they need help.
Yes.
People who have HIV get diseases 10 years before other people. They need help.
Yes.
People who are disabled, so they cannot move, exercise. They probably eat more than they should for their condition. They need help. Poor people, I said, poor people need help. But also, if we want to go to space, if we want to go to Mars, we need to solve aging because of cosmic radiation. We'll never get there without disease and we'll never come back. So there's more. Another thing, agriculture in agriculture, they're looking at aging because they want their vegetables to stay longer on the shelves and their fruits to stay longer on the shelf. Aging is everywhere and it helps everyone. Okay? The second thing that I want to say, there is a concept that's called longevity dividend. I told you that centenarians they live longer and they have contraction of morbidity.
Yes.
The CDC, the Center of Disease Control in America, have showed that the medical cost of somebody who dies over the age of 100 is third of those who die when they're 70. But there's a professor of economy, Andrew Scott, in London Business School, who said, guys, you don't know what you're talking about. He said, what? He said, okay, you're saying those people are not in the hospital, but if they're not in the hospital, where are they? They're traveling, they're shopping, they're buying apartment for their kids. So there's an economical value of adding health to our years. And this economical value is $36 trillion a year. Trillions. In other words, we cannot afford not to accelerate what we're doing. And this is something that now politicians are noticing. We've just been in a lobbying in Washington where they have a longevity caucus that is bipartisan. It's even not a matter of somebody to politicize that. And so I think the world has to change the funding for us, change the attention. More journalists have to work about it. And thank you for helping us, but also the listener to say, hey, let's just accelerate that and let's start and doing what we need to do to improve our longevity.
Okay, got that. I do not dare to ask you again if we will become immortal one day, but maybe I can ask you at the end, what's your best guess in, let's say, 20 years? What will be the potential of humans in 20 years? How old will we become? Can we become in 20 years?
I'm hoping that in 20 years we'll get closer to 115. I hope so. And the rest is much beyond that.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was fun, and thank you for allowing us to educate the viewers.